Are you okay with me being
Yep.
that mask? Okay.
I think we've got our 6 feet, right? We're good.
I'd like to make sure.
I'm Tricia Shalka, so I'm an assistant professor at the Warner School in the higher education program. My primary research interests are around college student trauma, so I really explore the impacts, sort of these aftermath and ripple effects of trauma. So things like how those experiences might affect relationships, might affect identity, so these questions of who am I that are really important during the college years, or even just questions of what does it mean for a student who's navigating trauma to work through their lives as a student, navigate some of our campus environments. Yeah, so one of my recent projects was a phenomenology of college student trauma. So in that project, I was really interested in understanding this deceptively simple and complicated question of what is it like to be a college student who has experienced trauma? And there were a lot of different pieces to that question. But one of my recent articles that I have published is looking at that in terms of navigating the physical campus environment. So what I found was that experiencing trauma as a college student changes the way you move through these campus spaces. One example I have from my research was a student who, one of her traumatic experiences was having her hijab ripped off her head. She's a Muslim woman, and that really changed the way she approached the entire campus environment because she was perpetually scared of something like that happening again. So it meant even going to class that she would try and get there early so she could have a seat with her back against the wall. That was the only place she felt even remotely safe. And if that couldn't happen, then she'd have these decisions to make of, do I want to negotiate with students to get a different seat, which was always a little awkward. And then some days choosing, I'm just not going to go to class then. We want students to be here to be able to attend class and learn and connect with others. And the ways that trauma can potentially compromise that if we're not attentive to building these environments that help students feel safe. So one success story that comes to mind is this summer I was invited by some of our partners in the health center to do a workshop with faculty about trauma-informed practice. So that was a really great space to just be able to talk with some of my colleagues to learn more about trauma, understand how it might manifest in the classroom, and really for all of us to think about strategies that allow us to help students be more successful if they're struggling. So I talk a lot about just the amazing colleagues I have here, these great students we have who come from a lot of different backgrounds and bring a lot of different perspectives to our classroom environments. And then the second thing I think about that is very different from a lot of other ed schools I'm familiar with, but it's a beautiful building and physical space that we have. And it's a wonderful environment for us to just be able to gather as a community, to have some of those informal interactions and connections, but really helps to be a wonderful part of the work that we do here together. So part of our mission is about making the world more just and humane. So I think you see it a lot with our faculty, our staff, and our students where we're trying to live that in our daily lives. And because we're an education school, it's so important to the work that we're doing because we are ultimately training educators who get to be out there in the world and helping others to think about how do we evaluate situations, how do we see the world through a lot of different lenses. In the higher ed program, we have students who are from a lot of different backgrounds. So we have students who are full-time with us, part-time. We have 3 different master's programs, 2 DD programs, and PhD. So sometimes we have students who have come straight out of their undergraduate studies, some who have been working in the field for decades and coming back for a degree. So really trying to live that theory to practice cycle. And something that I tell my students often is, I want them to bring their full selves into the classroom space to the extent that that makes sense for them, to bring their full experiences. And part of why I tell them that is because, I think that's the lens and the prism that we understand the world. But I also talk to them a lot about the fact that our personal experiences can really only take us so far. And when we get to the edges of those personal experiences, we need other ways of understanding how somebody else might be experiencing a particular situation, how people with other lived experiences might be experiencing it. I think that prospective students would find that we're very open and approachable. That's one of the strong points of Warner. So taking the chance to understand what it is that they're looking for, finding ways that we can really meet those needs, and to have a chance to sort of understand the great community that we have here. I think the thing that's most exciting to me every day is just I get to do the work that I love. It's one of those things where I get to pinch myself often that I get to think big ideas and talk big ideas and be surrounded by great people as I do it.